The crystal chandelier shattered against the marble floor like 1,000 accusations, shards scattering across the ballroom, as if the room itself had finally cracked under the weight of unspoken truths. "You think you're one of us now, boy? Parading your little secret like it's a badge of honor." Evelyn Harrington's voice sliced through the stunned silence, her manicured nails digging into the stem of her champagne flute as she loomed over Mason, her eyes gleaming with the cold fire of inherited disdain. In that frozen heartbeat, as the elite of Manhattan recoiled in horrified fascination, Mason felt the ghost of his mother's calloused hands on his shoulders, not pushing him down, but lifting him up, and he straightened, his heart pounding not with fear, but with the raw, unyielding pulse of a truth he'd buried too long under politeness and pretense. The Harrington Gala was the event of the season, a glittering farce in the heart of the Upper East Side where old money mingled with new egos, and secrets were the only currency worth hoarding. Evelyn Harrington, widow of shipping magnate Reginald Harrington, ruled her empire from a penthouse that overlooked Central Park like a watchful gargoyle. At 62, she was a vision of preserved opulence. Silver hair swept into an impeccable chignon, a gown of emerald silk that whispered of fortunes made on the backs of others, and a smile that could curdle cream. Her staff knew better than to cross her, except for Rosa Delgado, who had scrubbed those very floors for 20 years. Her quiet dignity the only rebellion Evelyn couldn't stamp out. Rosa's son, Mason, was 24, a barista by day in a Brooklyn coffee shop that smelled of fresh grounds and forgotten dreams, and an aspiring graphic designer by night, sketching logos on napkins that captured the grit and grace of the city he loved. He was lean and wiry, with the kind of easy smile that disarmed strangers and a laugh that echoed like summer rain on hot pavement. But beneath it all simmered a fire, fueled by the taunts of high school hallways in Queens, the sideways glances from Rosa's church friends, and the ache of loving in a world that still whispered other like a curse. Mason was gay, unapologetically so in the safety of his tiny Bushwick apartment, but around Evelyn's world, he played the part of the polite outsider, the maid's boy who fixed the Wi-Fi and vanished before dessert. Tonight, though, Rosa had begged him to come. "Just for the canapes, mijo?" she'd said with a wink, her apron still dusted with flour from the kitchens below. "And maybe to see if that fancy artist they hired needs help with the lights." It was her night off in spirit, a rare invitation upstairs to witness the unveiling of Evelyn's latest vanity project. A charity auction for youth empowerment. Ironic given how she treated anyone under her employ like chess pieces. Mason had slipped in through the service entrance, trading his faded jeans for a borrowed blazer that hung a bit loose on his frame, the fabric smelling faintly of mothballs and hope. The ballroom was a fever dream of excess. Tuxedos starched to perfection, gowns that cost more than Rosa's annual salary, and waiters gliding like shadows with trays of caviar and vintage Dom Perignon. Jazz floated from a hidden quartet, sultry notes weaving through conversations about stock tips and Hampton's weekends. Mason hovered near the edges, nursing a ginger ale in a flute glass, his eyes tracing the crowd with the detachment of someone who knew he didn't belong. That's when he saw Carter Harrington for the first time, not as Evelyn's golden boy, but as a man unraveling at the seams. Carter was 26, heir to the Harrington legacy, with the kind of looks that graced society pages. Tousled blonde hair that caught the light like spun gold, blue eyes sharp as Hudson ice, and a jawline that could cut glass. He stood apart from the throng, a tumbler of scotch dangling from his fingers, his tailored suit unbuttoned just enough to hint at the tension coiling beneath. Whispers followed him: Harvard dropout, playboy philanthropist, the son who partied too hard after his father's overdose scandal. But Mason saw something else. The flicker of isolation in Carter's gaze, the way his laugh never quite reached his eyes when a socialite draped an arm over his shoulder. Their eyes met across the room, a spark in the chandelier's glow. Carter tilted his head, a half-smile playing on his lips, and Mason felt it. A pull, magnetic and dangerous, like the tide dragging him toward rocks he couldn't see. He looked away first, heat rising in his cheeks, but not before Carter started weaving through the crowd, purpose in his stride. "You look like you're plotting an escape," Carter said, materializing beside him with the effortless grace of someone born to these rooms. Up close, He smelled of sandalwood and something sharper, like regret distilled into cologne. Mason chuckled, low and genuine. Guilty. These shoes are killing me. Borrowed from a friend who thinks formal means untied laces. Carter's laugh was real this time, a rumble that warmed the air between them. Carter. And you are. Mason. Helping out tonight. He gestured vaguely toward the kitchens, omitting Rose's name. No need to invite pity. Carter's eyes lingered, appraising not with judgment, but curiosity. Helping out or crashing the party. Either way, you pull it off better than half these phonies. They talked, easy, unforced, about the absurdity of auctions where a signed Warhol fetched millions for causes that never trickled down. Carter confessed his disdain for the circus, how it felt like performing for ghosts. Mason shared snippets of Brooklyn life. Street art that bloomed overnight, dive bars where stories outnumbered regrets. For a moment, the ballroom faded, and it was just them, two strangers bridging worlds with words. Then Evelyn descended. She swept in like a storm front, her laughter a blade wrapped in velvet, trailing admirers like courtiers. Carter, darling, there you are, schmoozing the help again. Her gaze landed on Mason, sharpening. And who might this be? One of the caterer's strays. The room hushed subtly, a ripple of anticipation. Mason's stomach twisted, but he held her stare. Mason Delgado, ma'am. My mother's on staff. Evelyn's smile didn't waver, but her eyes gleamed with recognition and malice. Rosa had mentioned her son once, in a hushed tone after a long shift, something about my boy's heart being too big for this city. Evelyn never forgot leverage. Delgado. Ah yes, Rosa's boy. She drawled the words, letting them hang like smoke. The one with the artistic inclinations. Or was it the other kind? A titter from the circle around her, pearls of judgment disguised as amusement. Carter stiffened beside him, but Mason felt the shift first. The way Evelyn's gaze pinned him, daring him to shrink. Tell me, Mason, she continued, her voice honeyed venom. Do you design those little flyers for the community centers? The ones with the rainbows and all that hopeful nonsense? The air thickened, the jazz turning tinny in Mason's ears. He knew what she was doing, outing him not with facts, but implications. A subtle knife twist for the crowd's delight. Whispers swelled. Is he? Oh, the maid's son? Carter's hand brushed his arm, a silent anchor, but Mason pulled away gently. This wasn't Carter's fight. Not nonsense, Mason said, his voice steady, cutting through the murmur. Hope's the only thing that sticks when everything else peels away. Evelyn's laugh was a whip crack. Charming, but darling, in our world, hope is for auctions. Reality, that's for knowing your place. She turned to the group, raising her glass. To realities. May they keep the illusions at bay. The toast rippled, glasses clinking like chains. Mason stood there, exposed, the weight of eyes like stones in his chest. But as Evelyn pivoted away, triumphant, he caught Carter's gaze. Fierce, conflicted, a promise unspoken. The night had only begun, and in the shards of that first fracture, something unbreakable was forging. The aftershocks of Evelyn's barb lingered like the bitter dregs of spilled champagne, staining the edges of every conversation Mason drifted through. He excused himself from Carter with a nod, "Gotta check on Mom," and slipped toward the service doors, the cool air of the corridor a balm against his flushed skin. But escape was illusion. The Harrington penthouse was a labyrinth of polished traps, and Mason's feet carried him not to freedom, but deeper into the beast. Rosa found him in the butler's pantry, a narrow space crammed with linens and crystal that smelled of lemon polish and quiet endurance. She was wiping her hands on her uniform skirt, her dark hair streaked with gray pulled back in a practical bun, lines etched around her eyes from years of rising before dawn. "Mijo, what happened?" "I saw her face." "Evelyn," Mason said, the name a shorthand for all the world's cruelties wrapped in cashmere. He leaned against the counter, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Just her usual sparkle. Threw some shade about my artistic side. Crowd ate it up. Rosa's face crumpled, then hardened into the resolve that had carried her from a border town childhood to this gilded cage. She pulled him into a hug, fierce and flower-dusted. She's a snake in silk, that one. But you're Delgado steel. Don't let her bend you. He held her tight, inhaling the scent of home, corn tortillas and Chanel No. 5 knockoff. Rosa had come to New York alone at 18, pregnant with him after a factory fling gone sour, scraping by on tips and tenacity. She'd named him Mason after a soap opera heartthrob, dreaming of the strength it evoked. And here he was, her dream manifested, but fraying at the edges. Go back out there, she murmured, pulling away. Show them you're not scared. That's how we win, always have. Mason nodded, but as he re-entered the fray, the weight settled heavier. The guests had dispersed into clusters, but eyes followed him, curious, condescending, a few laced with something warmer, like pity dressed as sympathy. He grabbed a fresh tray from a passing waiter, balancing flutes with practiced ease, determined to reclaim the night on his terms. That's when Carter found him again. This time near the grand piano where a lone soprano crooned Billie Holiday, her voice a velvet lament for lost lovers. Carter leaned against the instrument, his scotch replaced by water, his posture looser but his eyes stormy. You okay? Mason shrugged, offering a flute. Peachy. Comes with the territory, being the helps plus one. Carter took the glass, his fingers brushing Mason's in a spark that lingered. That wasn't territory. That was bullshit. My mother's. She's got this way of turning air into knives. Family trait. Mason teased, but gently, testing waters he wasn't sure he wanted to swim. Carter's laugh was wry. Guilty. Dad was worse, built the empire on broken backs, then drowned in his own excess. Mom? She polishes the ruins. He paused, gaze dropping to the floor. I'm sorry. I should have said something. You? Mason arched a brow. The Harrington heir, speaking up for the Maid'S gay son, might have caused a scene. The word gay hung between them, deliberate on Mason's part. A gauntlet thrown, or maybe a bridge extended. Carter didn't flinch. Instead, he met Mason's eyes, something raw flickering there. Wouldn't be the worst thing. Scenes are honest, at least. They fell into step along the periphery, the soprano's notes weaving a cocoon around their words. Carter opened up in fragments. Summers at Yale dodging frat boy haze, the pressure of boardroom shadows, the hollow echo of one-night stands that left him emptier than before. Everyone thinks I'm the wild card, but it's just noise, covering the quiet. Mason listened, seeing parallels in the cracks. The way Carter's charm masked a hunger for real connection, much like his own sketches hid the loneliness of swiping left on apps that promised more than they delivered. Quiet's where the good stuff lives, Mason said. Brooklyn's full of it. You should see the murals under the Williamsburg Bridge. Colors screaming what words can't. Carter's smile softened. Take me sometime? Show me your world. The invitation landed like a stone in still water, ripples of possibility. Mason's pulse quickened. Yeah, I'd like that. But the night had teeth. As they circled back toward the auction block, Evelyn materialized again, this time with a coterie of blue bloods in tow. Senators' wives, tech moguls, faces from Forbes lists that blurred into one smug continuum. She was holding court over a Faberge egg, its jeweled surface catching light like a false promise. Ah, Mason, back so soon? Carter, you've been monopolizing our guest. Her tone was saccharine, but her eyes dissected. Tell me, dear, what do you do when you're not assisting? The group leaned in, vultures in velvet. Mason felt Carter tense beside him, but he stepped forward, chin lifted. I design, ma'am. Logos, websites, things that make brands feel alive. Evelyn's lips pursed. Alive? How quaint. And does your lifestyle inspire such creativity? All that emotion must be quite the muse. The words landed like a slap, the implication blatant now. His queerness as spectacle, fodder for their amusement. A gasp from a dowager, a smirk from a hedge funder. Carter's hand clenched at his side. Mason's blood roared, but he channeled it. Not into retreat, but revelation. It does. Love, real love, it's the best muse there is. Messy, yeah. But it builds things that last, unlike some empires built on ignoring it. The circle froze, Evelyn's face a mask of porcelain fury. Impudent. You forget your place. No, ma'am. Mason cut in, voice even, eyes locked on hers. I remember it just fine, but places change when people stand up. Carter's voice joined, low but firm. He's right, Mother. Maybe it's time we all remembered that. Evelyn whirled on her son, betrayal flashing. Carter. But the soprano's song swelled, drowning her retort, and the crowd shifted, drawn by the auctioneer's call. Mason exhaled, adrenaline buzzing like live wire. Carter's hand found his elbow, a touch of solidarity that sent warmth flooding through him. You were incredible, Carter whispered as they melted into the throng. We, Mason corrected, glancing back at Evelyn's retreating form. But she's not done. And she wasn't. As the bidding began, millions flung like confetti for causes that rang hollow. The real auction unfolded in shadows. Evelyn's whispers weaving a net of exclusion, invitations revoked, futures tainted. But in Carter's quiet gaze, Mason glimpsed a different bid. One for redemption, perhaps, or revolution. By midnight, the penthouse pulsed with after-dinner haze, cigar smoke curling like secrets. Mason stole a moment on the terrace. The city sprawl a constellation of defiance below. Carter joined him, two silhouettes against the skyline. That scar, Carter said, nodding to Mason's cheek. Story. Bar fight in college. Defended a friend who got outed mid-party. Guy swung wild. I ducked too slow. Mason traced it absently. Worth it. Carter nodded, shadows playing on his face. I've got my own scars. Invisible ones. Dad's expectations, Mom's grip. And this. He tapped his chest. Feeling like I'm living someone else's script. Mason turned, close enough to feel the heat radiating. Then rewrite it. Start with a blank page. Their eyes held, the air charged with unspoken what-ifs. Carter leaned in, a breath away. A door banged open. Evelyn, flanked by her enforcer, a burly security head named Vance. Carter, a word. Now. The moment shattered. Carter hesitated, then followed, shooting Mason an apology over his shoulder. Alone, Mason gripped the railing, heart hammering. The city hummed below, indifferent, but he felt alive. Terrified, yes, but alive. Little did he know, Evelyn's word was an ultimatum, and Carter's choice would carve the first betrayal into their fragile trust. Dawn crept over Manhattan like a reluctant confessor, painting the penthouse in hues of rose and regret. The gala had limped into the wee hours, guests departing in chauffeured fleets, leaving behind the detritus of excess. Crumpled programs, lipstick-smeared napkins, and the faint echo of laughter that now rang false. Mason had slipped out with Rosa hours earlier, her arm linked through his as they rode the subway home, the rumble of tracks a lullaby against the night's chaos. But sleep evaded him. In his Bushwick walk-up, a one-bedroom with peeling wallpaper and a fire escape that doubled as his studio, Mason paced, sketchpad in hand. His pencil flew, capturing Evelyn's sneer in stark lines, Carter's tentative smile in soft shading. The scar on his cheek itched, a reminder that battles left marks, but victories? They healed in layers. Rosa, bunking on his couch per tradition after late shifts, stirred with coffee brewing. You look like you wrestled ghosts, Mijo. Worse, rich ones. He poured her a mug, black and steaming. Carter, he's different, caught in the web, but fighting it. She sipped, eyes wise. Be careful. Harringtons don't fight fair. They buy the battlefield. Her words lingered as Mason headed to his shift at the grind, a hole-in-the-wall cafe where hipsters nursed lattes and dreams. The routine grounded him. Steaming milk, bantering with regulars, the hiss of the espresso machine a counterpoint to his racing thoughts. But by noon, his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Hey, this is Carter. Last night was something. Coffee? My treat. 4 p.m.? Your spot in Brooklyn? Mason's thumb hovered, pulse quickening. Risky? Hell yes. But the pull was stronger. The grind. See you then. Carter arrived at 3:58. Incognito in jeans and a hoodie that couldn't quite hide his polish, drawing stares from the baristas. He slid into a corner booth, ordering a flat white with the awkwardness of a man and used to anonymity. You found me, Mason said, sliding in opposite, tray balanced with their drinks. Stalked your Insta. Subtle. Carter grinned, sheepish. Needed to see you. Away from all that. They talked for hours, the cafe emptying around them like a stage set clearing. Carter unspooled more. The closet he'd built brick by brick, hookups in Hampton's goose houses that left him hollow. The fear of disappointing a mother who'd sacrificed everything for the name. I'm bi if labels matter, but admitting it, in her world, it's suicide. Mason nodded, sharing his own tapestry. Coming out at 17 to Rose's tearful embrace. The parade of dead-end jobs. The queer art collectives in Bushwick where vulnerability was currency. It's not easy anywhere, but hiding, that's the real killer. Carter's hand crossed the table, tentative, fingers lacing with Mason's. The touch was electric, a quiet vow. Then let's not hide. Not from this. They walked out into the autumn crisp, leaves crunching underfoot like whispered promises. At the L train, Carter pulled him close. Not a kiss, but a forehead lean, breaths mingling. Dinner tomorrow? Neutral ground. Mason agreed, heart full. But as Carter vanished into the subway's maw, doubt flickered. Rose's warning echoed. The next evening, they met at a dim Italian spot in the village, candles flickering like conspirators. Over pasta and Chianti, barriers crumbled. Carter laughed at Mason's impressions of Evelyn's pearl clutchers. Mason melted at Carter's tales of childhood sailing mishaps, wind-whipped and free. By dessert, hands brushed knees under the table, a language of touches building toward something profound. I want this, Carter said, voice low. You. Us. Mason's reply was a squeeze, eyes shining. Then let's build it. But Evelyn's shadow loomed. That night, as Mason sketched their future in fevered lines, his phone rang. Rosa, voice trembling. Me Joe, come home. Now. She met him at the door, face ashen, a tabloid clutched in her fist. Harrington Ayres' scandalous slumber. Maid'S son targets fortune? Grainy photos. Him and Carter on the terrace, hands too close. Evelyn's glare in the background. Anonymous source, her, no doubt, spinning lies of gold-digging exploitation. It's everywhere, Rosa whispered. Texts from work. Threats. Mason's world tilted. Betrayal sharp as glass. But whose? Carter's silence screamed loudest. He texted, saw the rag. You okay? Hours passed. Then, call me, please. Carter's voice, when it came, was wrecked. Mason, I swear. Evelyn. Mason cut in, pacing his fire escape, city lights blurring through tears. Worse. She cornered me after you left. Said if I saw you again, she'd cut Rosa loose. No references, no severance. Blacklist her from every household in the city. Pause, ragged. I agreed. To protect her. You. The words gutted him. Protect? By letting her paint me as a whore? You chose silence. I chose time. To fix this. Desperation cracked his tone. Give me a chance. Mason hung up, chest heaving. Betrayal wasn't just Evelyn's venom. It was Carter's hesitation, the fracture in their fragile trust. He curled on his bed, sobbed silent, the sketchpad mocking him with half-drawn dreams. Days blurred into a haze of avoidance. Mason threw himself into work, designing flyers for a queer youth center, ironic armor. Rosa rallied, securing temp gigs through old networks, her pride a shield. But the tabloids fed the beast, Harrington's circle wagons against Gold Digger. Then, the call that shattered the stalemate. Carter unfiltered. I'm coming over. No more hiding. He arrived at dusk, hoodie up, eyes haunted. Mason let him in, walls high, Say your piece. Carter knelt, not in supplication but raw honesty. I was a coward. Feared losing everything, name, security. But losing you? That's everything. He pulled out papers, legal docs, Evelyn's empire mapped. I'm fighting back. Board vote next week. Expose her manipulations. For us. For Rosa. Mason searched his face, seeing the man emerging from the boy. Why now? Because your courage that night? It woke me. You stood unbowed. I want to stand with you. The kiss came then. Fierce. Forgiving. A dam breaking. Hands in hair, bodies pressing close, not for heat, but healing. They talked till dawn, plotting not escape, but reclamation. But Evelyn struck first. The board meeting leaked. Carter's instability. Whispers of his deviant dalliances. She countered with disinheritance threats. Vance's muscle at the ready. Climax brewed in the Harrington boardroom. A sterile area of glass and greed. Carter entered flanked by allies, reform-minded execs he'd courted in secret. Evelyn presided, regal in defeat's denial. You've gone mad, boy, she hissed as he laid out evidence. Embezzlements masked as charities, Rosa's blacklisting docs. For that, mongrel. For truth, Carter roared, voice echoing. And love. Mason's not the villain, you are. Chaos erupted, shouts, calls to adjourn. Vance lunged, but Mason, summoned by Carter's earlier plea, burst in, Rosa at his side, a USB of Evelyn's own recorded threats in hand. Enough, Mason said, voice thunder. Your game's end, or they all hear this. Evelyn blanched, the room a jury. In that moment, her empire teetered, not on fortunes, but fractures she'd wrought. The boardroom showdown bled into headlines, but not the kind Evelyn craved. Harrington heir ousts matriarch in power play, screamed the Post. Legacy of lies. Evelyn's empire crumbles, blared the Times. No more slurs against Mason. Just stark facts. Financial improprieties, staff exploitations, a widow's grip tightening into tyranny. Vance was suspended pending investigation. Rosa's name cleared, back pay tendered with a forced apology from Evelyn's lawyers. But victory tasted bittersweet. Carter moved into a modest Chelsea loft, his first on Harrington perch, trading penthouse views for street-level authenticity. Mason helped unpack, boxes of monogrammed linens clashing with IKEA shelves, laughter punctuating the awkward symphony. You're really doing this, Mason said, stacking books on quantum physics and queer theory. No safety net. Carter pulled him close, dust motes dancing in the slanted light. Nets you, and this us. Their rhythm built slowly, a romance etched in everyday strokes. Mornings at the grind, Carter learning to froth milk with comical spills. Evenings sketching logos for Carter's new venture. A non-profit funneling Harrington funds to real causes. Youth shelters first. Touches lingered. Fingers tracing collarbones over breakfast. Quiet dances in the kitchen to Nina Simone on vinyl. Love, unhurried, deepened roots. Yet shadows lingered. Evelyn retreated to the Hamptons, a ghost in seclusion. But her letters arrived. Poison pens dripping regret masked as reconciliation. For the family's sake, come home. Carter burned them unread, but doubt seeded. Rosa thrived, promoted to estate manager at a rival household. Her laugh freer. See, Mijo? Steel bends, but doesn't break. Mason believed it until the betrayal's echo resurfaced. A late-night call from an old Yale buddy. Evelyn's counterstrike, digging into Mason's past. High school bullying unearthed, twisted into instability. Anonymous tips to Carter's funders, painting their union as scandal. Carter raged in the loft, pacing like a caged wolf. She's not stopping. Thinks she can scare me off. Then we face it, Mason said, calm amid the storm. Together. No more choices alone. They went public not with fanfare, but a joint op-ed in the Village Voice. From boardrooms to bedrooms, reclaiming love in the age of legacy. Raw, vulnerable, Carter outing his bisexuality. Mason chronicling the Maid'S son's ascent. It went viral, shares rippling through queer feeds, ally networks, even late-night talk shows buzzing. Evelyn's response was a summons. Neutral ground, a Soho cafe, her alone. Carter went, Mason waiting blocks away, heart in throat. She looked diminished, hair unkempt, eyes hollowed. "You've ruined me. You ruined yourself," Carter said, voice steady. "With hate you couldn't unlearn." A pause. "Then he's using you. That boy. Mason loves me, as I love him. That's the difference." She reached for his hand. He withdrew. "Goodbye, mother." Outside, Mason enveloped him, tears mingling. "Proud of you." But the real conflict brewed not in cafes, but courts. Evelyn sued defamation, fiduciary breach, dragging family skeletons into depositions. Carter's allies wavered. Funders pulled back. Nights turned sleepless, arguments flaring. "We fight or fold?" "Fight," Mason insisted, but weariness crept. The climax crested at trial, a Manhattan courtroom humming with press. Evelyn testified, voice quavering. Victim of an ungrateful son, seduced by that Delgado influence. Jaws dropped at her vitriol, but Carter held, countering with docs, witnesses. Rosa's quiet testimony sealing. "She broke spirits for sport. My boy mended his own." Mason watched from the gallery, pride swelling. But as verdicts loomed, a juror note, deadlock, mistrial whispers. Despair hit Carter hard. Post-adjournment. In a rain-slicked alley he shattered. "I can't drag you through this. End it, Mason, before she destroys us." Betrayal anew. Not Evelyn's, but Carter's fracture. "You're quitting? On us?" "To save you." Tears streamed. "Go. Be free." Mason's heart cleaved. "Freedom's not solo. But if you push, I walk." He did, back to Bushwick, Rosa's arms waiting. Days bled into weeks. Radio silence. Mason poured pain into art. A mural on a shelter wall. Two figures entwined against storm clouds, fists raised. Crowds gathered, whispers of hope. Carter watched from afar, hollowed. Evelyn's final play. A settlement offer, full control if he severed ties. He refused, but the damage festered. Rock bottom came at the mural's unveiling. Mason speaking to a sea of faces. "Love isn't legacy. It's choice. Every damn day." Carter emerged from the crowd. Gaunt. Resolute. "I choose you. Every day." The kiss was public, defiant, rain washing clean. Evelyn's case collapsed. She settled quietly, retreating to obscurity. In the afterglow they rebuilt, not on fortunes but foundations. Carter's nonprofit flourished. Mason's designs its heartbeat. Romance bloomed in quiet graces. Stargazing on fire escapes. Vows whispered at dawn. Yet humanism whispered deeper. Evelyn's last letter, postmarked from a clinic. "Forgive or forget." Carter visited once, boundaries firm. "Heal. We'll watch from here." Mason, beside him, squeezed his hand. Love, they learned, wasn't conquest, but grace extended, even to the broken. Winter gripped New York like a stern mentor, snow blanketing the city in hush, turning brownstones into storybook facades. Mason and Carter's life settled into a rhythm as steady as the A train's rumble. A shared lease on a Harlem walk-up, where exposed brick met thrift store charm, and mornings began with coffee brewed strong enough to chase shadows. Carter dove into the nonprofit Haven Horizons, channeling funds to LGBTQ+ youth programs, his board meetings now peopled by activists, not aristocrats. Mason's freelance bloomed, his portfolio a mosaic of bold identities. Logos for pride parades, apps for safe dating in the shadows. Their love deepened in layers, unscripted and profound. Weekends wandered the high line, hands clasped against the chill, debating everything from Foucault's power dynamics to the merits of halal carts versus food trucks. Intimacy was tender. Nights curled under quilts, stories traded like treasures, Carter tracing Mason's scar with lips soft as snowfall. "Your mark of bravery," he'd murmur. Mason, in turn, coaxed Carter's vulnerabilities, teaching him to sketch. Clumsy lines evolving into portraits that captured souls. Rosa integrated seamlessly, Sunday dinners a ritual of tamales and tiramisu, her laughter the glue. You boys make an old woman believe in miracles, she'd say, eyes twinkling. But scars itched. Evelyn's absence was a specter. Rumors of her Hamptons isolation, selling off jewels to fund therapies unspoken. Carter wrestled privately, therapy sessions unpacking the maternal knot. She loved control more than me. Mason listened, anchor steady. Love her enough to let go. That's the win. Spring unfurled tentative, cherry blossoms defiant against gray skies. Haven Horizons hosted its first gala, not Evelyn's excess, but a community bash in a warehouse loft. Rainbow banners fluttering, drag queens emceeing with fire. Mason DJ'd, beats pulsing life. Carter spoke, voice cracking on gratitude. This is for the kids who stood where I hid, and for the man who showed me how. Eyes met across the room, Mason's, shining. Later, on the roof under stars, Carter knelt, not with rings but resolve. Marry me? Not today but when life's ready. Build forever. Tears pricked. Yes, all in. But conflict simmered beneath. A donor, Old Harrington ally, pulled funding, citing reputational risks. Whispers revived. The Maid's son still pulling strings. Carter's confidence wavered, old insecurities clawing. You're enough? Mason soothed, but the strain frayed threads. Arguments sparked. Over late nights, skipped dates. Petty flares masking deeper fears. The betrayal's ghost peaked at a fundraiser. Evelyn appearing uninvited. Gaunt in couture, eyes pleading. Carter, a word for old times. He met her in a side room, Mason hovering unseen. Her plea, reconciliation, a trust fund for the nonprofit, if he distanced from influences. Carter's refusal was steel. Your money's tainted. We build clean. She crumpled, whispering, I was scared of losing you to him. You lost me to fear. Yours. Evelyn left, but her words burrowed. That night, Carter withdrew, doubts flooding. What if she's right? I'm dragging you down. Mason's anger flared, raw. No, you're rising. But if you doubt us. A fight erupted, words weapons. Carter accusing Mason of naivety, Mason hurling Carter's privilege like a grenade. Doors slammed. Silence stretched days. Mason crashed at Rose's, heart splintered. She brewed tea, wisdom flowing. Love's not storm-free. It's sailing through. But he must choose fully. Carter, alone in the loft, confronted mirrors. His reflection, finally his own. He drove to Bushwick, unannounced, finding Mason at the mural, touching up colors in twilight. I was wrong, Carter said, voice breaking. Not about us, about fearing the mess. You're my clarity. Mason turned, walls cracking. Then commit. No half measures. They reconciled in Rose's kitchen. Apologies over arepas. Laughter hesitant, then healing. The donor crisis resolved, new backers, queer-led, stepping up. Evelyn's final act. An anonymous donation to Haven. No strings, a silent amends. Summer scorched in, their bond tempered. Vacations to Fire Island. Beaches alive with chosen families. Proposals whispered on dunes. Rings, simple silver bands exchanged in a Central Park ceremony. Small, sacred, Rosa officiating with tears. But humanism deepened. Carter visited Evelyn in rehab, boundaries bridges. We heal apart, he told her. But doors open. She nodded, fragile. I see him in you now, Reginald's fire without the frost. Back home, Mason and Carter hosted youth mixers, stories shared in circles. Comings out, survivals. One boy, echoing Mason's youth, hugged him. You give hope. In quiet nights, love's profundity bloomed. Not fireworks, but hearth glow. Carter's head on Mason's chest. We turned the night around. Mason smiled, and kept walking. Yet, a subtle tragedy lingered, not defeat, but the ache of what was lost. Evelyn's decline accelerated, letters faltering. Carter grieved preemptively, Mason his vigil. Autumn leaves fell like confessions, cycles turning. Their story, no fairy tale, but testament. Courage not in grand gestures, but persistent choices, loving through fractures, building from ruins. As the year waned, New York's pulse quickened toward holidays, strings of lights weaving through brownstones like veins of light. Mason and Carter's life had woven into the city's fabric, intertwined, resilient, a quiet revolution against the odds. Haven horizons expanded, satellites in Brooklyn and the Bronx, safe spaces blooming where shadows once ruled. Mason's designs graced billboards. Love wins when we stand, bold reds and golds echoing that fateful gala's defiance. Their home in Harlem thrummed with life, walls papered in sketches, shelves groaning under memoirs and manifestos. Mornings were sacred. Carter flipping pancakes, Mason annotating briefs over oatmeal, kisses stolen between sips. Evenings, they volunteered, mentoring at drop-in centers. Carter's charisma drawing shy teens, Mason's empathy unlocking guarded hearts. Rosa, now a fixture, hosted Thanksgiving, turkey alongside pozole, toasts to survival. To family, not blood, but chosen, she proclaimed, raising her glass. Carter's eyes met Mason's, a nod to the woman who'd birthed his partner, the backbone of their tale. Evelyn's arc crested quietly. Winter solstice brought a call, hospice, final stages. Carter went alone first, Mason's blessing a steady hand on his back. The Hamptons estate, once fortress, now faded echo, furnishings shrouded. Evelyn in a sunlit room overlooking dunes. She looked ethereal, fragility stripping pretense. You came. Couldn't not. Carter sat, holding her hand, thin, veined like autumn leaves. Regrets spilled. Reginald's neglect, her armor forged in loss, the fear that twisted love to control. I saw my failures in you, wild, untamed. Tried to cage it. Carter's throat tightened. You taught endurance. But Mason, he taught grace. Faint smile. Tell him, thank you, for making you whole. He did, later, driving back through snow-swept lanes, tears freezing on cheeks. Mason enveloped him at the door. No words needed. Love's language in touch. Evelyn passed on New Year's Eve, the city erupting in cheers below her window. No funeral fanfare. A private scattering at sea, Carter and a handful of reformed execs. In the salt spray he whispered, rest, we've got the helm. Grief wove through joy, humanistic in its honesty. Not erasure, but integration. Carter channeled it into a scholarship. Evelyn's legacy fund. For single mothers chasing dreams. Redemption reframed. Spring brought renewal. Their wedding, a rooftop affair in Harlem, under magnolias bursting pink. 50 guests. Queer kin, baristas, activists. Vows exchanged with city hum as chorus. Rosa walked Mason down a petal-strewn aisle, her pride a crown. You shine, Mijo. Carter, in linen suit, eyes brimming. From that night, you turned my world. I vow to turn yours, every dawn. Mason, voice steady. We turned it together. Forever's just the continuation. Rings slid on, cheers rose, first dance to at last. Etta's soul a bomb. Cake cut, toasts poured. Night fell soft, stars winking approval. Years folded forward. Haven grew national, Mason's art in galleries. Mural series Shades of Courage, that first sketched the cornerstone. Carter testified in Albany, lobbying for protections, his voice a beacon. They adopted a rescue pup, Max, a scruffy mutt who claimed the bed's center. Challenges came, funding dips, personal ruts, but they navigated, therapy a compass, date nights deliberate. A scare. Mason's health check flagged fatigue, burnout's toll. Carter nursed him through soup and stories, emerging closer. At 30, Mason reflected on the hook, that chandelier's crash, Evelyn's venom, a catalyst for becoming. We didn't just survive, he told Carter one anniversary, skyline aglow. We authored. Carter pulled him close. And the best chapters? Ahead. Humanism's close. Not flawless triumph, but flawed grace. They mentored Evelyn's Echoes. Youth from fractured homes. teaching that betrayal heals in time, courage compounds. Rosa retired to Florida, visits frequent, her stories the lore. In quiet, love's profundity. Hands clasped on subway rides, inside jokes over coffee. The scars trace a talisman. No grand tragedies, but the subtle ones. Missed chances, lingering doubts. Met with empathy. One eve, on that same terrace where eyes first met, Mason raised a glass. To turning nights around. Carter clinked. To every night after. And so, in America's beating heart, two men wove a tapestry. Not of gold, but grit and glow, proving love's quiet roar outlasts any storm.